Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday, and welcome back to another episode of Pucks and Power Plays podcast. Sorry for the quick delay. There was some fun technical stuff where my camera didn't want to turn on, but the audio was being weird, or the audio was being picked up, but there was no video, which was weird, but whatever. It's been figured out. So there's that. But anyways, welcome back to another episode. Pucks and Power Plays is brought to you by Boston Sports Entertainment Network. You can find BSEN at BSEN_617 on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And then you can also find them on TikTok with an extra underscore in front, so _BSEN_617. You can find the podcast at Pucks and PP's Pod on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Threads. We also have a Discord where we talk about trading cards, the podcast, and also host a hockey romance book club. So if you're interested, send a DM and we can send you the link for that. The book for May is going to be announced tomorrow, so that's something to keep an eye out for. You can also find us on Apple or Spotify or wherever else you like to listen to podcasts. And then I'm Liz, and you can find me at Liz__Fraser. And before we get into announcements, if you see me looking down, it's because the draft lottery is actively happening. So I'm very curious to see what's going on with that. So if you either hear that in the background or see me looking down, it's just seeing what's going on with that. I figured it'd be fun to kind of, besides talking about the fact that our season's over and looking at the postseason, knowing if we have a pick in the first round this year from Toronto or Florida, or I think it's next year from Florida or whatever it is. It's important to kind of have that information, and it does help with a better understanding of what's going on for this team and what we could potentially expect. So that's the reason why I'm glancing down. But I can try and do some quick announcements while all this is going on, because who doesn't love a fun little announcement? So the first one is in the top corner if you scan the QR code, or you can also type in bsen617.square.site. You can check out our website, which has some super cool stuff. If you want, I'll do a quick overview of the website. I probably should have pulled this up first, but that's okay. I have nothing pulled up today just because. But that's okay. Here we go. So here's our website for everything we have. As you see, we have stuff just based off the different teams. We have Bruins merch, Celtics merch, stuff for the Patriots, and stuff for the Red Sox. We also have a women's sportswear section. And what's cool about it is also, if you look at that top row, that's a certain super cool podcast that you might be listening to right now. So maybe get some of it. It's nice. It's comfy. I have the crop t-shirt. It's super nice. I'm a huge fan of it. But outside of that, we also have stuff just based around, BSEN and the different podcasts that we have. I could probably find a lot more. I forget what section they're all under. This is awful. I think they're on here somewhere. But it's okay. We also have just Boston stuff as well besides merchandise for our podcast. So it's super cool and something to check out if you guys are interested. I believe they're about to do the first poll real quick. So before I get to the next announcement, I'm just going to wrap that up. And we're going to see who has the first pick for the draft. Oh, it's like multiple balls. I wasn't really paying attention. I'm not going to lie. So the first ball was a 7 for anyone not watching, and Vancouver's still at the highest. A bunch of teams dropped. So we'll move on to our next announcement super quickly. This podcast has a sponsorship with Just Strong, which is a women's athleisure company focusing about uplifting and empowering women while making sure they feel comfortable with what they're wearing and within their bodies. So if you go to us.juststrong.com, you can use our code PUCKS103975 for 10% off your order. They have super comfortable clothing. I have a cropped hoodie from them, and it is great for the type of weather we are now starting to experience. Today was the first day. It was like super warm in a long time. And the crop hoodie is nice for like runs and stuff when it starts to get to this nicer weather. So it's something I'll definitely be wearing a lot more as it starts to get warmer. Also, so sorry, the second number was just drawn a few seconds ago, and Seattle and Washington are now out of contention for the first overall pick. So, not Seattle, St. Louis. Wrong team. Seattle jumped up a lot. And 11 just got pulled, so a bunch of other teams just got out of it. So, Columbus, the Islanders, the Devils, the other St. Louis pick, Nashville and Florida are all out of it. Seattle just dropped to 9.1. The Rangers shot up to 18.2, and Vancouver's at 27.3%. I'm very much like Toronto to not get this because I would kind of like their pick, but that's okay. Okay, they have 3 numbers for Vancouver. The Rangers have 2, and then every other team has 1 specific number. I swear to God, if a 12 comes up, guys, I'm going to cry. It's going to be really, really sad. I kind of want to give it to the Sharks. Of course they're doing a break. Of course. Well, in that topic of the break, I guess we can say the obvious. The Boston Bruins season for the 25-26 season is officially over. They lost in Game 6 to Buffalo, and all I have to say is I am very, very sorry. If you didn't listen to last week and you were waiting for our weekly predictions, I may or may not have forgotten to post it, because I may or may not have forgotten to post the bracket because I was so invested in the fact that, like, hockey, and it was stressful. But I may have caused the downfall of the Bruins. May or may not have predicted that Game 5 was going to be 2-1 in overtime, and it was going to be a Bruins win. I said that was realistic. I did have double overtime, though. It wasn't a double overtime. It was an overtime, but close enough. And then you can blame me for Game 6 because I did have 4-1 Buffalo. I really didn't think we were going to win it, and then I was like, oh, if we made it to Game 7, I could see it. But we didn't make it to Game 7, guys. I may or may not have called Games 5 and 6, and I'm so sorry about that. I didn't realize I manifested the loss of the Bruins, but here we are. But obviously what comes with the end of the season is also all the fun injuries that the team is dealing with. I'm going to pull that up in a second, but I am also going to pull up the quick little recap that we do need of the Bruins, and then we could do a quick glance as well because the entire first round is done and we are into the second round of what the playoffs currently look like, and a quick talk about that. Oh, they're about to do the first pick. Okay, while I pull this up, I will also be looking down to figure this out because it's important. Okay, so it's a 12. Tears. Okay. I have all the stuff for the games pulled up, but there's 5 seconds, so we're going to figure out who got the first overall pick real quick. Oh, you're kidding. Toronto just won it. We don't get their pick this year. They got the first overall pick. Sorry. Apparently I can't say stuff on here anymore. I'm apparently gonna manifest it. That's awful. That's awful. I'm gonna... We can totally pretend this is like the practice round, right? And they didn't just get the first overall pick? Because that'd be great. Sorry, I need to listen to my dad about that because that's just how we are. But okay. We're gonna pretend that didn't happen real quick, and we're just gonna go back to talking about the Bruins games. Guess we're not getting the first round pick this year. Anyway, Game 5 was the 2-1 in overtime game. For a quick little recap, this had happened on the 28th, which was exactly a week ago from today. I remember we did the little pre-game chat before it, which was tons of fun, and I kind of want to look at maybe doing more of those next season. Because while I like doing the Monday nights and obviously having the occasional live stream of a game, I do think having a pre-game talk, whether it's playoffs or like some type of fun game, is also kind of more fun to look at. Yes, it sucked that we had nothing for last time to go off of, especially with lines being different and everything, but I think it's still a really fun thing to look at and kind of talk about. Especially with what we can get about other teams at that time, too. I think that's something I might try and do a bit more next season. But the game started with a power play goal from Buffalo in the first period, obviously ruining the streak the Bruins have of having a perfect penalty kill. Honestly, for the fact that we only let in one power play goal throughout the entire series is honestly impressive, like super impressive to me. So I'm proud of our penalty kill and what they were able to accomplish within those six games. I think that is one of my overall perks that I'm going to highlight at the end of this of what I thought about the season. What they scored on the power play. In the second period, we had our second goal from Elias Lindholm. His second goal of the playoffs was our first goal that game. Great goal. I don't think there was anything that I was too upset about it. I was very happy that I mean this nicely, finally did something. I appreciate that. If I remember correctly, I think I picked him. I don't know. I will be sharing the final of the first guest predictions because it's over. But he scored, and then nothing really happened for the rest of the game. And then we hit overtime, and about 9 minutes into overtime, we had a beautiful goal from Pasta. Before that, we did have a goal from Corrali that got called back in overtime. That would have been the game winner. They blew the whistle. If I remember correctly, watching the replay, the puck was in the net when the whistle was blown, but they had waved it off because he pushed it out from under the goalie. But whatever. We still won the game, so does it really matter? No. No, it doesn't, because we didn't get eliminated from that. But overall, I think the team played well. I loved their fourth line in that game with the grit that they brought into it. I was very happy to see something from Elias, and this came with the line change as well. Let me pull it up real quick. Sorry, I need to remember where the lines were. So, in all of our previous games, we had our typical first line of Geeky, Lindholm, Pasta. Our second line was our second line, which did not get to exist for Game 5 because RV was out for the rest of the series. So with him not traveling to Buffalo, obviously, he wasn't going to be in the lineup. We already knew our second line was going to be different before everything got jumbled around. And we had Reichel, Mitten, Husnudinov as our third line at the time, and then our obvious fourth line of Jano, Corrali, Kastelik. Our D pairings, the only change we had going into Game 5 was Yoki Haru subbed in for Harris, who did not have a great Game 4, to put it lightly. But we did some stuff that I wasn't super excited about, but also kind of loved at the same time. I wasn't the biggest fan of breaking up Mitten and Husnudinov, but we did do it for Game 5, and it worked out. We had Husnudinov, Zaka, Pasta for the first line, Middlestat, Geeky, and Mitten, Steve's, Lindholm and Isamont, and then Jano, Corrali, Kastelik. I know there was a lot of question with RV being out if Hagens was going to end up playing, and I'm not going to lie, I feel like Steve's and Isamont kind of made not necessarily a case for themselves, but they weren't horrible. They stood out in somewhat of a positive light. They weren't really doing anything that I was like, get them off the ice this moment. Definitely breaking up the first line was needed, especially seeing as we had the goal from Pasta and the goal from Elias. That line just wasn't working anymore, and it probably should have been changed before Game 4 even started, but That's okay. You live and you learn, and it's Sturm's first season as a coach, so you can't be mad. Then for Game 6, we kept the same lineup with the one difference of Elias Lindholm and Fraser Minton swapping spots. But otherwise, everything else was the same. We lost the game 4-1, and no offense, after the second goal, I kind of had a feeling that was it. But we had 2 goals from Buffalo in the first period. And it just kind of felt like the Bruins weren't fully there. Like, yes, they existed, but at the same time, no, they didn't. In the second period, we had a goal from Pasta, which was fantastic and kind of looked like we got the team back into it. And then we just continued to hit a ton of posts, which did not help, or we missed the net. And then Buffalo had a goal in the third period that was just kind of the final nail in the coffin about almost a full 6 minutes in. And then, obviously, they had their empty netter to make it 4-1. The big thing that came from this game, if you remove the fact that it did eliminate the Bruins, is the moment between Benson and McAvoy at the end of the game. So Benson, according to the refs and his penalty, tripped McAvoy in a dangerous, as I would like to say, way. Because no offense, but the way he fell, that's not how you fall when you're tripped, and that's not how you position your leg when you're tripping someone or your body. Especially going into the boards on, I believe it was an icing call. There was an empty net. Like, there was no need to do what he did. And McAvoy, clearly pissed off. It's the end of the game anyways. There's like a minute to go at this point. You know Buffalo has the win. Nothing's changing. McAvoy gets up. He's a very pissed off person and slashes full-on wax Benson. Which, you shouldn't do that. I'm not going to say, like, oh my God, how, like, I don't know how to word this without I'm not defending him. Oh, the Sharks got the second overall pick. Sorry, that just happened. So I think Vancouver just fell to third. But good for the Sharks, honestly. Happy for them. But back to what I was saying. I don't condone what McAvoy did. Obviously, you shouldn't go around slashing people like that with a full-on whack. But, like, it wasn't justified, but it felt, like, reasonable in the moment. It was very much a heat of the moment. Game's over. There was no need to do that. All the frustration that has festered throughout the series and throughout the season for him just kind of came out in that one moment. So it's not. It was just interesting, especially with how the Department of Player Safety reacted to this, which is where I'm not the biggest fan. So Benson got no sort of consequence out of this. However, McAvoy has a in-person hearing with the Department of Player Safety that is being held on Monday, on the 11th, in New York City, which means he can be suspended for more than 5 games. And this is where a bit of personal bias and opinion might come in. But if I remember correctly, his record's not too bad. I'm going to actually pull it up. Sorry, I'm like trying to find his history within it. Yeah, so in 2019, he did have a hit to the head that cost him Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Final, and then in 2023, he was suspended 4 games for a hit to the head, which isn't great. But I'm not going to lie. It's a slash. hit Benson in the hands. It didn't hit him in the head. So I don't think it should be long, but I feel like this is where the opinion's creeping in. The reason he's getting an in-person and a probably longer suspension is somewhat potentially to make an example out of him for the fact that he did call out the Department of Player Safety in February for the hit to the head he received from Florida that went uncalled, unfined, unsuspended. Like, there was nothing, and there should have been something. So I feel like there's a bit of a, you did this, we're going to make an example about calling us out and why you shouldn't do that, which isn't great. But that's just my opinion. Might not actually be the facts, but I have a feeling it kind of is. So I remember correctly, they did something like this a few years ago with another player, which isn't great. They shouldn't be doing that in the first place, but it is what it is. Also, they are showing the dates for the draft right now. 7 o'clock for the first round on June 26th, which is a Friday. The NHL draft will be happening, where, of course, Toronto has the freaking first overall pick. I'm not salty at all. I promise. I'll pull up the full list of that in a moment. But the big thing we have to look at is that we do have comments from them after the game, with McAvoy talking about how he didn't appreciate the slew foot from Benson. And then he did have the comment about if he expected to hear from player safety, saying, I won't play another game until September, so I can't imagine it really matters much. And then Ruff did talk about it as well. And it seems like he doesn't think it's the worst thing ever. Yes, he thinks it maybe crossed the line, but he's not calling for McAvoy to be, like, suspended like some coaches do, which kind of shows you, I don't know, maybe a bit more of, like, it wasn't as bad as some people think it out to be. But Lindy Ruff's quote is, I'm just going to say we're on motion. Charlie's a hell of a player, cares about winning. Anyone would want him on their team. He probably went a little too far, though. So not the end of the world. Very clearly isn't a big thing that he's like, hey, get him suspended, like some coaches will do when things like that happen. So not that serious. But of course it's going to be serious, and we probably won't be seeing him until October. Because if I remember correctly, this upcoming year is the year where all the new changes come into play. So there's only 4 preseason games, and he can play a max of 2 of them. So he will be suspended into the regular season, which is unfortunate, but I don't think they can necessarily be like, you're suspended, let's say, for 6 games. I don't think the 4 preseason games will technically count, considering he's allowed to play a max of 2. But we'll see how that actually works out when the season begins. Because, again, maybe they will count out 4 because it's like, oh, because you're suspended 2, you technically can't play these 2, but you could then play these 2. So we'll see. It's going to be interesting. But outside of that, with them being eliminated, we do have a bunch of other stuff that's coming from this. So Buffalo obviously advanced. And then the following day was, it was game 1 for Carolina and the Flyers. The day after that was the final game for the first round. The only series that went to a game 7 was the Tampa-Montreal series. And what I could describe as the most insane game ever. That entire series was, like, fantastic and fun to watch. I think it's honestly the fact that 4 of the games went to overtime and every single game was decided by 1 goal is crazy. But the craziest thing is how Montreal won 2-1 in the final game with only 9 shots, while Tampa had 29. For anyone who didn't watch it, Montreal had 4 shots in the first period, and their first goal was a tip-in. So they shot it. It was tipped by Suzuki, and then it went off the defenseman for Tampa. So that was a very unfortunate play of events for them. It was very lucky for Montreal in terms of it going off of 2 different people to get in. So you can't really be mad at them for giving that goal up. It's unlucky, but not necessarily on the goalie. The second period, Tampa had a power play goal. They limited Montreal to, get this, 0 shots that period. So it's a 1-1 game. And then we go into the third. Montreal gets 5 shots this period, and they have a goal. Their goalie played out of their mind. Vasilevsky, like, I know his save percentage doesn't look great for that game, but I don't think he was, like, horrible. The defenseman did a great job in front of him of limiting the shots. It was just unlucky for them in that scenario. But still, getting to see Buffalo and Montreal play in the second round is going to be exciting. I'm not rooting for Montreal. I'm not rooting for Buffalo. If I have to pick a team, I'm going with Buffalo because I'm a Bruins fan. I'm not hopping on the Montreal bandwagon. My team that isn't the Bruins is still in the playoffs, and I'm very happy about that. So I still have Carolina to root for. Currently, if we want to look at the second round, we have Colorado had advanced. They are playing Minnesota, who beat Dallas in 6. Colorado is currently up 1-0 in the series, and they are the one game that's tonight. The game is happening in, I think, like 30 minutes. So that'll be fun. Vegas beat Utah in 6, which was unfortunate. I very much wanted Utah to keep going. I had faith in them. Everything was really close, so it felt like a lot of series could have been either or. I'm very much surprised the Kings got swept. I feel like they maybe could have stolen at least a game, and then I'm surprised Ottawa got swept considering Allmark's numbers were insane. But the Ducks beat the Oilers in 6, so they're playing Vegas. So Vegas is currently up 1-0 in the series. If I remember correctly, I'm opening this up. The empty netter goal for Vegas was apparently an icing that didn't get called an icing from what I had heard. I haven't seen it yet, but that's something I'm going to watch after this. And then Buffalo and Montreal haven't played yet because, again, Montreal finished their series 2 days ago. Their first game is going to be, I believe it's tomorrow. Yes, their first game's tomorrow. Game 2 for Vegas and the Ducks is tomorrow. And then we have Carolina and the Flyers. I'm sorry to the Flyers. No matter who won that series, they weren't winning against Carolina. Carolina's already up 2-0 in the series. Game 3 for them is on Thursday. Carolina won 3-0 in the first game and then 3-2 in overtime. Yes, last night. Which, by the way, for insane series, Colorado, Minnesota, oh my gosh, they had 15 goals in game 1. 5 each period. So Colorado ended up winning the game 9-6. But they were up 3-2 at the end of the first. Then it was tied 5-5 at the end of the second. And then 5 more goals happened. And I'm like, I kind of know how the game's going to go today. The rest of the series is going to be like, 1-0, 3-2, like 2-0, 3-1, like stuff like that. Nothing crazy is going to happen. But the fact that that was their first game is insane. It's kind of like the Minnesota one against Dallas where they beat Dallas 6-1 and then everything else was relatively close. I'm not going to lie. I would like to see like bigger goal scoring games from these teams. I feel like that'd be a lot of fun just to see like, if not one more, at least 2 more like high scoring games combined. It doesn't necessarily have to be one team being like, we're going to win 8-1. Like honestly, if we have like an 8-6 game or like a 7-5 or something like that, I would love to see it. I feel like those games are fun. And they add a lot more to the series. So that's something I would 100% love to see that I don't think we will see. But that is the end of it. But then we have our end of season injuries. That just came out the other day. It came out Sunday. And I'm going to try and find it real quick. I'm going to find it. I promise, guys. There was a ton of injuries. We had a lot of stuff that came out of this, but the first injury that came out was before Sunday, actually. It was Zadorov talking about how he has a torn MCL that is off the bone, which the fact that he played with that and he suffered it in game 3 is absolutely insane to me, because if it's off the bone, it's on your knee. How the heck are you playing? The amount of painkillers he had to have been on to be able to play through all of that and still deliver hits that he had is insane. No, that's just... Sorry, I'm turning off ESPN real quick because I realized it's still on. But that is just personally crazy to me. And then we have a bunch of other season-ender stuff that is fun and nice to talk about besides the injuries. We do have Sturm talking about that he had no issue with the Bruins leadership with no set captain. He won't commit to the Bruins needing to name a captain before next season. And while I think having a captain would have helped, it's also very clearly showing that without a captain, this entire team is leading itself. They're working together to build this leadership and community and culture within the team. That's the word I was looking for. So even though they don't have a captain, there still is a culture. There's still this leadership group, and they're working together, and they're bringing up some of the younger guys into this. And we also see that with what Kuznetsov talked about in his exit interview, if I can find that real quick. We have Kuznetsov said Boston has become like a home. The team is like family to him. He plans on working on learning more English during this off season, but he did talk about wanting to be a leader within the team. I'm going to find it real quick. Yeah, he wants to be more of a leader. Some other little fact that he said watching Netflix has helped him with his English. But I do like the fact that he said one of his major goals is to learn English so he could be more of a leader. I feel like that shows a lot about the culture within this group and how it's not just the older guys in there that have this leadership. We're also allowing the younger guys to speak up and voice what they want to voice and say stuff to help lead the team. So I like that we're seeing that, and I think not having a captain may have helped with that, because our captains in the past have allowed for this. Not to say that they haven't, but obviously you had the set tone when it was Chara with the C or Bergeron with the C. You knew they were your leaders. And then you had the other guys who would sprinkle in leadership here or there, but they were the guy you go to. And this is very much the entire team is working together to build this. And I kind of like that a bit at the moment. I'm not going to lie. I don't necessarily know as of right now if you give McAvoy or Pasta the C. I kind of like having it be this entire team, because it doesn't feel like there's a full, clear leader. But outside of that, we do have a bunch of other stuff. Let's see. We had Lindholm was dealing... Hampus, I have to specify there's two. I'm so sorry. Hampus Lindholm was dealing with a foot fracture that he first suffered in late December. We just talked about how it didn't really bother him as much. He said it's healing well, and it helped to have the padding within the skate. It sucked more for walking, obviously. But he should be good to have a normal offseason with proper training and not needing surgery, which is great. Elias Lindholm was dealing with a back injury this season. It was similar to the one that bugged him at the end to start last season. So last season, it was rocky, and then the back injury obviously cleared up, and suddenly we got this Elias Lindholm that we saw. And we saw that Elias Lindholm to start this season, and then it just kind of derailed into how we started last season. And that is where I'm feeling that back injury came into play, which isn't great. We also have that Arvidsson dealt with a fractured rib and punctured lung that held him out of game 6 and 5. He was trying to get back for game 7, but that's insane to me. A punctured, I know Bergeron played with that and a bit more. And I've seen people being like, well, Bergeron did it, why didn't he? And I feel like the big difference needs to be stated of Bergeron was playing in the Cup Finals and in the elimination game. No offense. If you're going to put your body on the line, you put it on the line for the elimination game in the Cup Finals over the first round. Like, that could very easily have caused a severe injury that could impact him for the rest of his life. It could have even potentially killed him with the fact that it's, again, a punctured lung and a fractured rib. That can very easily go wrong if he's playing and cause something worse, could cause death, like it could cause a bunch of stuff. So I feel like the safest option is to sit out in the first round. Now, if this was like Stanley Cup Finals, Game 5, Game 6, yeah, I'd say play, maybe. Okay, it depends. I wouldn't say play because, again, player safety is genuinely the health and well-being of these players is important. But if you're going to pick to play and you have to pick one of these situations, you pick the Cup, you don't pick the first round. The first round doesn't matter. It's the first round. Yeah, it sucks. You get eliminated, you're out. But it's not for the Cup. It's bringing you there, but it's not the Cup. So don't put your body on the line. Don't put your health on the line. That is something I think he definitely should have sat out for. We also had that Zacha had a high ankle sprain, but he said it didn't. He didn't think it limited him too much. I'm very curious when this came into play because if this was happening around February to the end of the season, that man was on another level. So it very clearly did not bug him at all. If it was at the start of the season, I could probably see that, especially with the fact that, like, in the final 2 months, he had doubled what he already had for goals in the season. So, if it's at the start, okay, it might have bothered him a bit. But if it was at the end, I have no clue where that hit him. We also had a bunch of stuff from Pasta. He was dealing with a groin tear that he suffered in November. It did impact his skating, but he said he felt better in the final month of the season and the playoffs. We also have stuff about Pasta and shooting with his quote. He said, I definitely need to get back to shooting more. He said he felt like he rushed on some scoring chances this year when he could have made a better play. He made it clear he wants to score more goals than he did this year. And part of that came with him being more of a playmaker this season, and he did mention that. So it's nice to know that he's kind of leaning back from being that playmaker and deciding to actually go for the shots next season. Now, if he wants to be a bit of a playmaker, I'm not going to be mad. He can be a bit of a playmaker and do that. That's fine with me. There were moments where I thought it was great and that he should have done it, but there were, again, moments where he should have shot the puck, and he didn't. So the fact that he realized that is great going into next season. We also have Sturm talking about if he could envision either Higgins or Mitten being our number one center in the coming years and said, why not? So, not mad about it. He sees the potential. We also had that McAvoy broke his hand in Game 2, which I'm surprised he was still able to play and hold the stick. I know he mentioned that holding the stick was difficult at times, but, he would still played. And that's crazy to me because I feel like a broken hand's one of the things you can't necessarily play through because you kind of need your hand. I guess broken foot's more so the biggest one you can't play with, but, broken hand feels like the other really, really big one because, you have to hold the stick. If you can't properly hold the stick, it's not going to work out. But I believe that's it injury-wise. And then there's just a few other quotes. Sturm talked about improving the defense. He praised our goalies by saying one of the reasons we made it this far is our goalies. We can't expect that every year, so that means we as a group, we need to find ways to limit scoring opportunities, which I agree with. We relied a ton on our goaltending this year. So it's nice to notice that he also noticed that, praised the goalies, and was like, here's where we need to work on. We also have, there's a few other ones that I'm trying to find real quick. Sorry, I'm trying to see who has them. There was a ton of quotes. Oh, we also have that Higgins is going to play at Worlds and Sway is not going to because his baby's due around that time, which is fair. And I think it's going to be tons of fun to watch Higgins at Worlds. So that's something I'm definitely looking forward to. We also have that McAvoy's getting some MRIs and dental work planned, which, let's be real, we know he needs the dental work and it's fair to wait till the end of the season. But the MRIs maybe aren't the best thing, but it is safe and a good thing to get for him. We do have Sturm talking about Arvidsson, who is a free agent. He said that RV gave him exactly what he was hoping for. He didn't disappoint me. And then said it would be nice to have him back, but there's more to it, which I know a lot of people took negatively, but there is more to it. As much as Sturm would like to have RV back on the team, he's not the one necessarily making that call. It's between management and RV and his, why can't I think of the word? Agent. That's the word. So with their contract negotiations, that's not up to Sturm. He could be like, yeah, I want this guy. But he ultimately doesn't have the final say. It comes down to what RV wants and what management wants and what they're willing to offer. So there is obviously more to it. I would like to have him back. I think I said it last week, but I'll say it again. He has definitely sold me. On him, I wasn't the biggest fan to start the season, but I would like him to stay on the team. He's made it clear that he's a Bruin. Let's see, what else is there? There was... Oh, I'm trying to find it. I'm so sorry. This is the worst thing about trying to find where all these things are. Okay, so on Elias with his back injury, there is the quote that he's on year 2 of dealing with the back injury, that he got the offseason he signed with Boston. He said he only felt 100% at the very beginning of the season, which I feel like we saw with his play, as I mentioned. He then said he got at least one back injection during the season, and he got it right before heading to the Olympics. Which, fair, I get it. You want to go to the Olympics. But if it is bugging you that much, and I get it, there's a chance you might not get to go to the Olympics again, maybe sit home and focus on your health. I know that's a thing we talk about a lot, is like focusing on your health and making sure, you do everything that you need to do for your body and you don't just play through it, because that can make it worse. And I feel like we kind of saw that, because if you're needing to get injections for your back, you maybe need to sit a bit. And that also comes from a medical standpoint with the team as well, with maybe being like, hey, maybe don't let this guy play. Maybe don't clear him. Maybe make him sit and rest his body. Outside of that, back to leadership, we have a quote from Sturm saying that he liked this year's group of 3 alternates and that they'll evaluate what they want to do in the summer when it comes to having a captain or not. We do have, as some people have talked about, Zaka mentioning that he hasn't been involved in extension talks with the Bruins yet, which is fine. There's no need to freak out, because he's technically not allowed to until July 1st when he has a year remaining, so he's not supposed to be talking about it yet. So even if he is actually talking about it, he can't say that. So no need to freak out. He's fine. Everything's fine. And then, I don't know if we have anything else. I'm checking real quick. I do know within this time we sent, Reichel went through waivers and he cleared. So he's back in Providence, helping Providence in the playoffs, which is fine with me. I'm glad he made it through. I'm not necessarily surprised. I know some people were, but if I remember correctly, only active teams in the playoffs can pick up guys on waivers. So like the Sharks, for example, can't pick someone up because they're not in the playoffs. So that's very limited teams with already kind of set team that they're not going to be like, let me just pick up that guy. So I'm not surprised with that. I'm happy. Let me see. I know there's more stuff from Stern, but I don't know what I'm going to be able to find. And if I can't find more, I can't find more. That is what it is. Yeah, I think that is what it is for what I can find by now, which is fine by me. It's not the end of the world. Sorry, I still can't believe Toronto got the first overall pick. But also what that means for Boston isn't necessarily great. It does give us some issues when it comes to having to get a defenseman, because the plan was we'd pick a defenseman ideally within the top 10 or top 6. Toronto was very likely to have the 6th overall pick, so that's kind of where we would have picked. It would have been great for us, but now you do have Toronto most likely, if they don't, I will be surprised, taking McKenna first overall, which isn't great to have that in the Atlantic with us at the same time. But let's see what else. Yeah, as Ty said, this was basically the worst case scenario for the get help now case. We really needed that pick for a defenseman that'll be here by this time next year, and then we could use our own pick for a trade for help up front. But all of that's out the window now. And then I believe with where Florida landed, we get their pick next year. I'm gonna pull that up real quick. But let's see. Yeah, we had a 58.2% chance of the pick coming to us, and that didn't happen, which really sucks. So, oh my gosh, and this gets even worse because of a trade they made with the Flyers. Oh boy. Okay, so for fun stuff for next year, so the Toronto first coming to Boston has now been pushed to 2027 at the earliest, but there is a catch. If the 2027 pick is outside of the top 10, it would go to Philadelphia as a result of their trade with them this last year. If the pick is inside the top 10, however, they would be given the option to either send it to us or the Flyers. And obviously, let's be real, you're not going to send it to your division rival. You're going to send it to someone within the conference, and the Flyers are probably going to get it. But they do have the opportunity to send it to us. If we don't get the pick from them, that means we won't get it until 2028. Which sucks, but it is what it is. Let's see what else we have. I will say coming in 2 years will probably not help great with our core, as this article mentions. But let's see, we also have, I think the one from the Flyers got moved. Yeah. We are most likely getting not Flyers, Florida. We're getting the one from Florida, it looks like, in 2028 because Chicago is getting the one for 2027. So if Toronto doesn't give us their 2027, we would theoretically have 3 first-round picks in 2028, which, like, not mad about that, as long as we don't repeat 2015. But, like, it's not the worst. I can live with it. And then the overall pick, I will pull that up if it loads real quick. We are getting, where is it? sorry. I'm trying to load the image. I'm going to find it on here. I promise I can find it. Yeah, we are getting the 2028 pick, which whatever. Can deal with that. Okay. I have the results. I'm going to share them now because I finally pulled it up. But obviously, Toronto has a first overall pick, and then it's the Sharks. Then Vancouver, Chicago, the Rangers, Calgary, Seattle, Winnipeg, Florida, Nashville's number 10. The Blues have 11th. The Devils have 12th. The Islanders, followed by Columbus. Then the Blues again with the one they got from Detroit. And then finally, Washington is the 16th overall pick. And then obviously we'll see with how the playoffs play out, who trickles in where for the final 16 spots. But that's a bit crazy. Oh, I hit the wrong button. So sorry. Sorry, I'm still in such disbelief that Toronto got it. I believe I also accidentally called McKenna a defenseman when he's a forward. So very, very sorry about that. That's my bad. I'm still on the thought of how we need defensemen and we're not going to get one, and then I accidentally combined it, but it's okay. I also kind of think it's funny that someone already changed his Wikipedia to say that he's playing for Toronto when he's not yet, and they didn't even pick him. But that's okay. But I guess we can do like a quick little look at our picks now, because obviously we're not getting a first round this year. But we do have our own first round pick, which is fine. We still have one. We could potentially, I know there was talks about trading it, so we can either trade up or trade for a forward because we will have the higher pick from Toronto. But now without that, that does bring in the question on if we'll trade it or not. We have one in the second round, one in the third, 3 in the fourth, with one of them coming from Tampa and one of them coming from Detroit, none in the 5th or 6th, and then we have our own from the 7th. And then obviously for the quick look ahead of the next few years, in 2027, we are guaranteed to have our own. The one for Toronto is a 50-50 if we will have that or not. So we'll say we have like 1.5 in the first round. We have our own from the second. We've traded away our 3rd and our 5th, but we have our own for the 4th, 6th, and 7th. And then in 2028, as of right now, we will have a pick in every single round, with 2 of them coming in the first because of the one from Florida, and potentially becoming 3 if we get the one from Toronto then. Which I feel like if our guys can deal with it, with them potentially, depending on where we pick, coming in within the... I'm sorry, I'm doing math real quick because all the guys we're picking for this year for the 26th, yeah, they would potentially be coming in the 28-29 or 29-30 season, which based off contracts would be the final 2 years for Pasta. Wouldn't be the final 2 for Sway, which is great, but it would also be the final 2 for McAvoy, which not a fan of. Oh, Pasta I think has one more. I don't know. My brain's not braining right now, but we have a chance of it coming in within the final years for those guys, which isn't great. We kind of did need to move up, but that does also now consider what we have, what we can trade, and what's now potentially on the line. In terms of players, again, I think you sign Arvidsson. I'm not mad about it. I want to keep him. I think you also sign Reichel. He's a restricted free agent. Yes, he makes a bit much, but not so much that I'd be mad about it, especially with him maybe being up and down. Maybe see if you can pay him a little bit less or keep him around the same price range, not the end of the world. Defenseman, I personally would sign Harris again. I liked him. He would be a great either seventh guy, especially with Aspro in the lineup now. He can flip up and down between Providence and Boston. But I think Harris is a guy you sign, especially with what he proved out of camp with making the team again. And who knows, with a healthy season, maybe he can consistently be there. Maybe he'll beat someone out. Or he could even just stay in. Like, he could beat out Yoki-Haru, for example. But he needs time to consistently play again. And I feel like that'll help show where he's at. Peak, I feel like we're just letting him walk. I don't see him being signed again, especially with how all of our defensemen are. So I don't necessarily see that spot for him anymore. I think if we're trading anyone defensively as of this season, obviously you can't move McAvoy or Hampus. I feel like you're going to see a trade coming with Yoki-Haru. Maybe, if we really, really need something. If you're trusting your younger guys. I could see Lowry potentially being moved. Honestly, between those two, I think they're going to try and get rid of Yoki-Haru first and then get rid of Mason. But if they really need something and Mason's there to like sweeten some type of deal, you're going to get rid of him. And then with forwards, there's not a lot of wiggle room you can do here. You do have, I know people have talked about trading Zaka. I don't see that. He has very clearly beaten out Elias Lindholm for that top center spot. And not even that. That second line was beautiful. Elias doesn't click with the first line. He is, and I mean this nicely, on this team, a third line center with how they are and with how our lines work. He works with Pasta for a bit, but he doesn't work consistently enough to stay there. And obviously, with the no movement clause, you're not going to be able to trade him or send him down. But if you can not force him out, but if you can, force him out, he's the guy I would personally get rid of. But again, no movement clause, so you can't really just move him without him wanting to go, which isn't great that you're paying that much for a third line center, but it's okay. Obviously, we're not moving Geeky. If we wanted to move him, he would have been gone by now. It's not happening. He has his no trade clause kicking in on July 1st. I could see a potential move of potentially Middlestat. If we need a trade, I think something's going to be done about Isamont or Steves. It's going to be one of them. I'm not sure which one, but one of them is going. And I don't know who. And then obviously, you're not moving Sway. Nothing's happening there. I do feel like we'll potentially see a Corby trade. But also it does depend on Providence. Besides DiPietro, our other goalies are restricted free agents, which does mean we have the rights to them first, but who knows how that's going to go negotiation-wise if DiPietro is also going to want something. So we could see him potentially being called up if we want to give Sway more time and we move Corby because of that. And then we have our defensemen, and basically almost every single forward in Providence is just, are they staying, are they going? Our restricted free agents kind of don't really have a choice if we want to keep them or not. But I feel like my main priority, and I mean this nicely to every other forward on the team, my main priority out of every unrestricted free agent is Patrick Brown. If he wants to keep playing, you keep him in Providence. I think he's great. He's done a lot for the team. He's a great captain. Yes, he's on the older side, but when he's been called up to fill in the role of like a fourth line player, he's done it well. He works great with the kids. He's, again, experienced, great leader. I would like to keep him. So he would be unrestricted wise, obviously. So we're ignoring Patra, Lysell, all of them. He's the guy I'm focusing on. Again, would like to see Patra again. Lysell would like to ideally give him a chance. And I will say the one person, unrestricted wise, that I don't see sticking around this season is Merkulov. I feel like he's going to go to a team where he can have the chance with their NHL team, and he's not really seeing that in Boston. So I won't be surprised if he walks. But that is everything. I'm still figuring out if I'm going to film weekly. for the rest of the playoffs, or if I'm just going to film one like right at the end of the Stanley Cup, because until the series kind of end, there's no more Bruins hockey to talk about, so there's not new stuff with us. And it's more so just going to be about other teams and what's going on. Obviously, whenever they end, we'll do one. We'll do one for the draft as well. And then obviously with free agency, we will be doing one then. So confirmed dates are June 29th and June 22nd, because June 22nd is right before the draft. June 29th is right before free agency. So we'll have those days, and then maybe a little, depending on how this goes, short little one to potentially talk about like all the stuff that happens on the first day of free agency. Unless it's like last year where like nothing big really happens, but we'll see if that happens and when that can happen that week. Also just because work's work. But until then, I will maybe see you guys next week. We will figure this out. I will at least do one more this month, if not every week this month. But life's also getting a bit busy again, so we shall see. But until then, thank you all for joining us. If you want to listen to other podcast episodes in this potential little break that we're doing, that is still up in the air. I will make an actual announcement on if that's happening or not. You can find the podcast at Pucks and PPs Pod on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Threads. And then you can listen to us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever else you like to listen to podcasts. I always recommend personally watching on YouTube because, again, I speak with my hands if you guys haven't seen this. Or if you go back to older episodes where we have guests, or when Emily used to host this, there are moments where we will say stuff and just kind of stare at each other and make looks and stuff. And that's always fun to see, in my opinion. So that's something, if you're watching us on YouTube, you'll get to see that. If you're just listening and getting to hear these beautiful voices speak to you. And you just don't get the facial expressions. And that's fine. But I think the facial expressions are funny. But that's also just me. So if you want to watch it on YouTube, you can find that at BSEN_617. They are also, besides YouTube, on Twitter, Instagram, and then TikTok with an extra underscore in front, so _BSEN_617. And then if we do go on the break, if you want other podcasts to listen to, if you go to BSEN_617 on Twitter, in our bio, we have every single other podcast that we do. I'm going to show you that real quick. That is the wrong thing I clicked. Don't mind me, guys. I promise I know technology. But in our bio, we have every single other podcast that we have. We also have our store listed on there. So if you want something for baseball with everything going on, especially after firing half of our coaching staff, that's something you can check out. You can get their reactions to that and what they think that means for the season. We have one for the Celtics with how their season unfortunately ended in Game 7 and they kind of blew the series. We also have, besides the Bruins, we do have Conwood Sports Podcast. They're just talking about all sports. And they're tons of fun. They're also doing, right now, I believe, I forget what they are, but they are doing some live stuff from an actual event right now. So check them out on Instagram if you haven't, because they have some very cool stuff coming out right now. But other than that, that's where you can check everything. That's where you can find us and other stuff. But thank you for joining us. And then if you want to find me in my random little blurbs that might pop up, you can find me at Liz__Fraser. And until next time, it is nice seeing y'all. Bye.